Hello, this is Mrs. Tomlinson, and this next Monday we're moving into week 4, and the project for week 4 is to create an original podcast by using storytelling to engage your listeners. And you'll also be designing a cover or a logo for your podcast. So if you go right in here to this slideshow, remember I'm in classwork, and you can click the slideshow. And this will take you through all the different parts of creating a podcast. Now, if we were in our classroom, we would have access to microphones and we would have different editing software like Adobe Audition. So we would do this a little bit differently. But since you're at home, everything that we're doing for these projects is all accessible through your Chromebooks. So you can open this slideshow and you can go through each of the slides, and this will help you move through the project. So you want to create an original podcast by using storytelling to engage your listeners. So there's a lot of different sources like Spotify that you can stream podcasts from, and there's lots and lots of podcasts out there. A podcast is a radio style program usually recorded in an MP3 digital format. Often podcasts are produced as episodes in a series. If you like a particular series, you can subscribe and get more episodes. You can listen to podcasts on computers and mobile devices, anywhere you can access the internet while driving, running, cooking, dinner, eating breakfast, or walking the dog. You can stream or download podcasts for later listening, and there's an ever-growing diversity of genres, content, themes, and tones because an ever-growing number of podcast consumers are learning how to produce and publish their own podcasts. So it's a lot like making YouTube videos. A lot of people are doing it now. So the technology needed to produce and publish your own podcast is becoming more affordable and easier to use all the time. There are now apps that allow you to record, edit, and publish a podcast right from a smartphone. Even though podcasting has become more accessible, creating a high-quality podcast still requires planning and attention to both the content and the sound quality. So now I'll have you guys go and do some research. So I've listed several podcasts here that you can listen to. You can just click the link right here. They're all about maybe 5 to 7 minutes. And then each of you have a copy of the slideshow. So you can each write your responses after you listen to the podcasts. And this is one of my favorite podcasts, is an NPR podcast called The Hidden Brain. So it's all about things in our brain. And then there's reflection questions. And then here's another one from the Moth Project. This is a very wonderful podcast about stories that just from people of how they experience things and stories that they remember from childhood or when they're older. This is another Moth Project story. And then I want you to find and research your own podcasts that you might be interested. Maybe you're interested in Minecraft. I bet there's a podcast for that. Or if you're interested in cooking, I'm sure there's a podcast for that. So research some new podcasts that might interest you. You might end up listening to them all the time. This is the Moth Project that I just mentioned. And then there's some storytelling tips that you really want to think about when you're telling a story, okay? The first thing is that stories have a change. So the main character, which is probably going to be you, has to change in some way from the beginning to the end. Stories have stakes. So something about this moment mattered to you. Tell us why. Know where your story's heading. Steer clear of meandering endings. So you don't just want to but you don't just want to go on and on and on and on until you kind of lose your listener's interest. So you really need to have a clear ending. So it would not be a bad idea at all to kind of write out your story and outline it really briefly. Be yourself. We don't want you to try to be anybody else but you, because that's how it's going to be original. It's going to be interesting. And think, it's not a monologue or a stand-up routine or a rant. You want to just tell a story. Be comfortable. And this is important. Only share stories that you're ready to share. If there's a story you have that you don't feel comfortable sharing, then you don't have to share it. Here are some questions that I want you to think about when you're planning your story. What genres of podcasts have you listened to? And these might be things that you're already listening to. When and where do you listen to podcasts? Sometimes I will always listen to The Daily, which is a news podcast, when I'm painting, because I usually paint after my children go to bed, and I'm able to make artwork after they go to bed. So then I kind of also want to hear the news while I'm doing that. So that's kind of a time where I kind of do that all the time, every day. If you were to create a podcast, think about what genre you would produce and who's going to be your target audience, because that's really going to shape the way and how you tell your story. And then what topic would you like to explore through podcasting? So maybe, let's say you, if you want to like maybe explore for example, cooking, maybe you tell a story about like a memory that you had about cooking or making something, and that's where you start. You can use Flipgrid to record your podcast. This is something everybody has access to on your Chromebooks. And then when you're done recording, you can design a cover or a logo for your podcast. So I've just put some simple examples on the right here. You can use all text, or you could have some simple imagery. You can have, little symbols, little icons, anywhere. Or it could be really simple, like The Daily is kind of just this fade. And the moth actually has an image of the moth on it for the Moth Project. So it could be anything. It's totally up to you. You could draw it by hand if you want and scan it in, or if you want, you could use Google Drawing. You could use Photopea, any of those tools that you have on your Chromebooks. Please make sure that you type any comments in your assignment. So let me know if you have any questions. Post them in the comment section and I will answer them on a daily basis. I'm always checking every day to make sure you guys know they have what you need. And if you have any questions, I'm always love to give you feedback and try to answer your questions. All right. Happy podcasting.